A graphical score is a visual representation of music, which means you can take any image or any drawing and turn it into a song. Now that's very interesting. You might write down this and it sounds like this. Or you take a cluster of dots and coffee and dirt and it might sound like this. You can interpret this in any way you want. Now back in the days of 1950, this made for some very experimental music, but since the day is now and most of us write in our DAWs or on our computers, that begs the question, are graphic scores still relevant? Oh hell yeah! Traditionally, graphic scores are usually very abstract, with a lot of big movements and tiny details, dots, lines, colors, shapes, anything you can think of that would make interpreting very interesting. Most graphical scores are pieces of art in and of itself. Nowadays, we might use it more as a song structure, or a tension curve, or a filled spectrum. It could be anything you want. But I'm going to propose that a graphic score can be either one of two things: an analytical tool and a creative tool. Let's start with analytical. Let's say you want to write tension into your song, and you're at your final climax, and your song has to feel like, what? But it doesn't. Well, then you can ask yourself, well, what does it feel like? Well, it feels kind of like this. Now you might ask yourself, why doesn't this feel climactic? And you start writing out your entire song as a tension curve. Maybe you find that every single one of your choruses has the same intensity, so there's no contrast. Or maybe your final climax is the biggest, but the parts in between are just not that low, so the contrast makes it seem smaller. Visualizing your music can make you understand your music differently, and that can be very nice. On to number 2, the creative side. Okay, so let's say you have a certain emotion, and you want to get it out there, you want to make music with it, and you draft, and you just can't find a way to make your music feel that certain way. What do? Well, okay, let's try drawing it. Grab a piece of paper, it has to feel like bah, like ooh, like pacha. And then you can try to link what this art, if you can call it art, means to what you feel. So maybe today you felt really down and lonely or anxious, and that's what you wanted to write about. This first shape, to me, looks like a very powerful sawtooth dropping down. And there you can see that it's kind of widening and then becoming smaller. So it's kind of like... Now this second shape, maybe your frustration or your anxieties just spirals inwards all the time and just keeps moving in this cyclical way. And we might represent that in harmony as well. For example, with chords that don't stop developing or never really develop, or there's not 4 but 5 chords in a loop, for example. And then this third figure higher up on the paper is kind of like a V shape. So you might, right off the bat, I'm thinking about like a melody. Something that drops down and then ends on this powerful ball shape. Maybe something like... So now we have this powerful downward cascading sound here. We have this cyclical spherical movement that we might represent in harmony, and we have a shape that the melody can take. So I'm thinking bass, harmony, melody. And to me, and this is of course very personal, I would represent it like this. Don't worry about drawing well or drawing a masterpiece. It's not about that. That doesn't matter. It's about drawing your creativity in the way that makes sense to you. So as long as it works, it doesn't matter what it looks like. If you know what it means, that's all that matters. Okay, but let's extend this idea. And for those of you who are not that good at drawing and don't feel comfortable expressing your emotions in a drawing like the way we did, let's extend this idea. Let's say I don't know what music to make. I am struggling to recreate my emotions exactly. All right, let's open Pinterest or Google or any of your other favorite image sites and let's make a mood board. Mood boards are way faster at creating rough outlines of emotions or atmospheres or places you want to represent. It's quick, it's dirty, it's kind of the fast food of graphic scores. It probably won't be exactly what you're going for, but I find it's kind of a quick and dirty way to immerse myself into an atmosphere or a location if I have to write for a location. Try it out, see if it works. What we just did was use a graphical score to analyze and create. And so if you want to start practicing this, there's 2 ways you can do it. The first one is, the next time you're stuck writing music, here's what you do. You grab a piece of paper, and you try to draw your problem. So let's say your mix isn't good, then try to draw what your mix sounds like to you. Your mix might be a little blurry or muddy, so you can draw like this blob of mud in the low end of your spectrum. Maybe your instruments are too cluttered, so you can draw like different shapes and colors of instruments and pile them on top of each other. Maybe your mix is too dry, so that feels a little boxed into me. That's why I'm doing that shape. Or maybe it's too sharp, so I'd represent that with this spiky red pattern in the top end. Now what we just did was analyze using drawings. The second way we can practice this is more about using it in a creative way, and we might say, I'm gonna draw my mix, but I'm gonna do it before I start writing music and use it as a reference. First of all, I'm gonna put my vocal right in the middle of my mix, nice and strong and prominent, but not too big so it doesn't dominate the rest of the spectrum. Next, I'm gonna add a kick that's nice and sharp and tight, but not too low and deep, so it can contrast very well with a big bass with a lot of rough distortion on that thing. I'm kind of in a big bass mood today. So now that the kick and bass are kind of hanging out together, the vocal feels kind of lonely. So we're gonna snuggle it together with a nice synth sound and some background vocals, really adding a lot of harmony and depth and layering to that part of the spectrum. And now, there's only 5 things that are really prominent in this mix, so there's a lot of room for a lot of reverb, ambience, and background details. And now this is a very good starting point for a mix. That might be very interesting to have a reference track and a reference visual mix. That's pretty cool. So I hope this helps. I hope these techniques give you a new perspective on writing music and shows you that when you're stuck, it doesn't have to be a dead end. Sometimes, in order to make music, you have to not make music. And graphical scores might be very good for that.